So I just wanted to do a brief video talking about the fact that, by now, by this amount of time, Zones Only has comfortably taken over as the main format for top-level play. It's basically the only thing you see in scrims, and pretty much every single tournament top teams enter is Zones Only right now. It has officially surpassed all modes in what I want to say is the first time in the Splatoon scene, for the Western one at least. There have been times Zones Only has been popular, but I don't think it's ever been the main format like it is right now. And so I want to do a little bit of a, just kind of an explanation really, more than a discussion about like why this is happening right now. Because, I don't know if it's going to last forever. I don't know what's going to change with it. And there are still all modes tournaments to clarify. They're not like completely gone, and outside of top level, they're still the main format. But I want to talk a little bit about why most top teams are participating in Zones Only right now. So, a few things I want to say. First, other modes have had worse meta developments. People have gotten better at playing the other ranked modes, and people have also gotten a little bit tired of some of the bad parts of playing modes better. So, for example, Rainmaker is much more stally than it used to be. Rainmaker really didn't get to develop much in Splatoon 2, a lot of the time because of Stingray, changed perception of the mode, but now that we've played it, we don't have a death beam to kill the Rainmaker. It's become really clear that this mode is very campy. You get a good lead, you put it in some kind of Rainmaker free zone or a corner, and you stall. And that's not that fun to play, for example. Clan Blitz is another big problem. The baskets are spaced so far apart, and people are fighting so much with Tacticooler, that it's very rare that people score. Nintendo has the King's Cup going on right now, which is like, it alternates one mode for each event. And you can see these problems in action from some of the best JP players if you watch those tournaments. And then tower control is a little bit snowbally. All of these have weaker map and mode combinations. Nothing new there. So the other modes have felt a little bit worse to play as people have gotten better at optimizing them. Another factor is that all modes mapless. I think there's a small factor, but it matters to me personally a lot. Is that all modes mapless never really got that consistent. Some of them would repeat, but there would definitely be a lot of changes. There were some all modes lists that were 16 maps, some that were 12, 20. I saw 24 at some point, even higher. And like beyond the map amount, which ones were used were changing all the time. It never really felt like it consistently had a map list that would be played too frequently. There would be some maps you would see a lot of the time, and so what would happen is these maps that have become staples, like the Mako zones or the ink blot tower controls, would just be all you would see once it gets to counterpick. It would be those stable ones because the other ones change so much. Whereas Zones Only counterpicking is honestly doing a little bit better because there are, the entirety of the maps to be able to pick from, which I'll get to a bit later. But because people can consistently practice pretty much all the Zones maps, or at least most of them, you have a lot wider of a range of counterpicks for what you want to pick to. And as a side note, to be fair to all modes here, I think they have been hindered by a rule that has been common, which is that you can't go back to the mode you previously won on, like, at all. I think that is a bad rule for best of 5 sets. It becomes too limited what modes you can pick, and there's only a few maps for each mode, so counterpicks get really, really limited. But that's a bit of a side tangent. So, moving on from that, the meta in Zones. Talked about it for a while. It's the easiest mode to pick unconventional weapons. You see them doing better in Zones than other options. Zones currently has the most diverse amount of weapon picks compared to the other modes. You see more things being picked. This has always been the case, so it's not really new. But I believe it bears some repeating here, that is a big factor because of the meta game we're in right now. So currently, in the meta we have right now, we have not really figured things out. It's now been 3 months since the big midline patch that ended, or not ended, that you can still pick those comps, but changed the metagame. It's been 3 entire months. And we still don't even know what the best comp in the game is. Like, we know it probably includes pencil, but every other weapon is on the table. Like, we know what it might be, but we don't have a concrete answer. And we've gone through different phases. I think at the beginning, there was a lot of experimentation. At one point, there was, like, Roller 52 or Roller Min stuff got really popular. Now we're seeing, like, more sword and dive style comps. We're seeing things like Junior for Bubble, We're seeing more of Dooley, which I talked about at the beginning. We're seeing Stamper and Mints get more popular. And, like, this is just going to keep going on. Tournaments keep getting won by different things. One of the most recent Western tournaments was won by a V-Blaster, by a JP team, but it was like a V-Blaster double bubble comp, and the other place team was Grays running a junior, and like both of those things are relatively very new. So clearly we're still figuring a lot of things out, and it's easiest to figure things out in a zones-only environment compared to all modes. So no matter where people are trying to figure things out and run consistent comps and have more consistent practice to figure these things out, Zones provides that consistency. Whereas if you go to, you know, maybe you play Rainmaker, your comps are going to change drastically. If you played a Tower Control, your comps are going to change drastically. More often, they're going to be more limited versions of what you ran before, which makes it harder to develop these more unconventional weapons that people really like seeing. And there's another factor to this, which is the fact that we are in pickup culture now. I believe I talked about this a little bit on the main channel video going up yesterday, but I didn't really get to say too much on it, but you might have noticed. There's, like, no teams right now, and there hasn't been for a few months. Like, pretty much all of them died, and usually they reform, but that hasn't happened this time. The teams have all died, and people are just kind of chilling. I think that eventually we're going to get teams, but it has been a slower process, and part of that might just be the whole meta thing that we just talked about. If people aren't sure what's best, then a lot of players are having a hard time figuring out what they should play. It's also a time where a lot of players are developing individual mechanics in such a mechanic-focused game. So people being able to experiment with a lot of other different players or work on and learn specific weapons are an important factor right now. Like, I think Clef is one of the best examples of this. You might have seen him in tournaments recently, learning and becoming a dually player, and then eventually finding a group and consistently practicing dually with a comp built around it, going for this pencil dive style of comp with Junior and Stamper. And that's what I think we'll see developing. I think it's just happening slower for the other teams. I think Gray's group has had a big advantage of consistently practicing and knowing the way they want to play the game against a bunch of other changing groups that have not had as much consistency in what they're trying to play towards. I think that's allowed them to develop a lot faster than other people. But it's those kind of trends that pickup culture has that is going to lead to things developing slower, and in this case, if it's more individualistic, if you're just playing in pickups, guess what mode is easiest? It's zones, once again. So it's another factor that leans to this mode being more popular. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't think Zones only getting more popular was because of one specific thing. I think there were a lot of factors that came together at the same time, which is the reason why this shift is happening for the first time. I think it's all of those happening at the same time, and players have been the ones pushing for this. The reason these tournaments are starting to do zones only to cater to the players is because that's what the players have requested. That's what the players want now. So that's what we're going to see more of. And I think if we see all modes, it's going to be things like minus Rainmaker, and Zones get some extra maps or something like that, a Zones preferred format. So that's an interesting change. Now, some personal opinions before we wrap up on this format. Some things I want to see. I have one request for Zones only, because I'm pretty cool with Zones only. I like it more right now than the other modes. I'm fine with it. Personally, I've really enjoyed the stability of the mode and being able to try out more different comps and play more unconventional stuff. I mean, look at the weapon on the screen right now. That's not happening in all modes. However, I do have a gripe with it. Typically, when we played all modes, I think the median map list was like 16 to 20. That was about how many map modes we would have in total for the tournament. All zones is 24 maps. And some of these maps are fucking garbage. I just have to get this out there. Eeltail Alley was like there as a tiebreaker in, I think it was the Sendoku season finale, and I do not know one person who was excited to see it. I actively saw complaints that Eeltail was there. Right now, how the format works is people are just picking the maps they want. Like, each team picks 6 maps, and it generates the map list off that. But I guess in that tiebreaker one, it goes to any map. So there are some stages that basically no teams are picking because the maps are terrible and no one wants to play on them. Stuff like Eeltail or Sturgeon or Lemuria. The Lemuria is a little bit new, admittedly. And those stages are practically never getting picked, but they are being practiced, because when you do zones only, you get into PB, you make the room, and what do? You just do random and ban the stage you just played on. You don't play with the stages banned on the start. And I get it, that's how Japan does it too, like they don't ban any maps either. But I really do not see a reason we have to play stuff like this or this in tournament. I think narrowing it down a little bit, getting rid of the worst offenders of maps, would make the format so much better. So, not saying you have to get rid of that many. Obviously, there still needs to be a decent amount of map variety. But we can cut down a little bit. I'm just saying. That's what I would like to see in terms of improvements. But, yeah. That's my discussion on it. I'm cool with it. I think it's fine. I know some viewers might be worried about things getting more stale. But if anything, I think Zones is where it has been more interesting to watch. Hopefully we'll see some experimentation with the other modes at some point, but I mean, this is here just to kind of tell y'all why things are the way they are. And I'm sure it'll change, because the formats we use for tournaments have always kept changing. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully this explanation helped out. Bye.